Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Iblis Manifestations Podcast. This channel features lengthy off-limits conversations with various different artists and entrepreneurs, predominantly from the underground metal scene. We take deep dives into the topics of life, music, spirituality, and take insight from a variety of thought-provoking perspectives from personalities who you don't often hear from in a mainstream settings. I am your host, Cheyenne, and I was originally born and raised in Iran and currently reside in the UK. I am the frontman and founding member of the black death metal band Trivex, who have been active since 2009. The band originally started in the Islamic Republic of Iran, where such type of music is banned as well as a punishable offense. You can check the band's pages for any updates on tour dates as well as new music. I am also a personal trainer and an online fitness coach who specializes in people achieving the best versions of themselves physically and mentally. Having been someone who was once extremely out of shape and overweight, I find it to be my duty to be able to pass on the information and knowledge which I've gained to help others achieve the same transformation. The Iblis Manifestations Podcast also features a variety of solo episodes where I discuss personal experiences and anecdotes in a very candid fashion, covering everything from mental health, spirituality, philosophy, and even paranormal experiences. This is the Iblis Manifestations Podcast. To support it, be sure to subscribe to the channel and visit the link in the descriptions.
It's great talking to you, Cheyenne, really. And best of luck to your endeavors for this podcast. I think it's a great initiative.
You're my favorite person to talk to for interviews and stuff. So I love what you're espousing out here. I love the knowledge and the perspectives that you're curating through this, and I'm just so honored to be a part of it. Thank you.
As I told you, it was one of the most interesting interviews I've ever had, because we talk a lot more things than just music, and I really appreciated that.
I respect you deeply, and it's an honor to be here.
And friends, remember as always, better to die on your feet than to live on your knees. Enjoy the podcast. There we go. All right, Gav, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast, sir. Been really looking forward to this one. How are you doing?
I was going to go with my usual, I am doing well, but listen, mate, firstly, thank you for inviting to come on here at this podcast. I appreciate it. Secondly, the honest answer, it has been a day, a fucking day. Agents and managers and everyone else that makes this fucking industry such tough work have been causing it today. So I have got a pint, I have got you to chat to, and I'm looking forward to it, pal.
There we go, man. I do not question that for a second. And listen, it's a real pleasure to have you on the podcast, you know. So as I very briefly just mentioned to you now, I've been to many different editions of Damnation. I've recently become a huge fan of the podcast that you guys have got. And you know what? In fact, this morning I was training pull in the gym, okay? And as I'm doing my bent over rows, I'm having to listen to the tales of Stinky Pete or Portaloo Pete, as was one of his nicknames. And man, that made my morning.
Right, okay. Well, firstly, for folk who are coming to this from your listenership, wondering what the hell we're talking about, the podcast I am part of is Two Promoters, One Pod, which is myself, Gavin from Damnation Festival, and James Scarlett of ArcTanGent and 2000 Trees. And today's episode, we had a guy, Stinky Pete from a company that put his portaloos in for ArcTanGent and 2000 Trees. And believe me, I never thought that was going to be a guest on the podcast. I never thought for a second that was going to be a conversation. But it was requested by someone on our Patreon, and he came on. He was a bit of a legend. Some of the content was a lot for me. It was a lot.
We could never
held back. he never held back, did he? So I was a bit squeamish by the end. I'll never look at a Portaloo or a flusher handle the same way again.
Yeah, no, I think the best part about the episode, so I listened to the stream version on Spotify earlier whilst I was in the gym, but then as I got home, about like literally in the last half an hour or so, I was watching the YouTube version because everyone was talking about your facial expressions, and honestly, it is that's like one for the books. That's like lighting in a bottle entertainment right there. It's just you listening to those Portaloo stories. Brilliant.
Can you imagine though, right? So you've put the effort that you've put into this podcast and the guests you've had on and the great conversations, and I've heard a few of them, and you do really well with it. And then
thank you.
Your crowning moment, your achievement, is some guy came on and talk about the size of shites, basically. You know what I mean? It's like it's all very well. It's all very well. It was well received, but part of your heart breaks. And that's what the fan base, the listenership, I've went, oh my God, it'll never get better than this. And I'm like, oh, it just shows you. People like you to talk about shit.
Yeah. I mean, I appreciate where you're coming from, and also thank you for the kind words. The thing is, yeah, that guy, you know, I respect him a lot, actually, I have to say. You know, because it's one of those things you don't really think about it, and then it comes up. And I think one thing that you guys do so good with your podcast is that, you know, you kind of bring this nuance to what it's like running a festival, you know, and I will get into that in a moment. But yeah, you just develop a newfound respect for all the people that are involved with the different aspects of it, you know, and for that guy, I respect him, you know, because of how he carried himself and how he was telling the stories. But also at the same time, you could just tell that that's a man who's seen a lot of shit, you know?
It's a man who's seen a lot of
literally, yes.
And I tell you, I feel the same. So we started the podcast a year ago, pretty much a year ago to last week. And it's a marketing tool. It's to drive extra attention towards our festivals and to sell tickets for our festivals. We don't want to go on TikTok and do dances. So we thought, what's the next best thing? We can attempt to have a conversation. What can we have a conversation about? What goes on behind the scenes? How we book bands? How you deal with agents? How you deal with managers? How you put lineups together? And as that's got deeper and deeper and deeper, it's like, okay, we'll talk about the contracts. Well, what happens with riders? And then it's like, what happens with... Then somebody's saying, you get Stinky Pete on. I'm saying, you want to have a conversation about the person that puts in the Portaloos? Yes, we do. And then you get that. And then I've got that exact newfound respect as well. I mean, this guy, was fucking passionate. He was passionate about his job. He's doing 16-hour days putting Portaloos in and cleaning them, taking them out. Sounds like for a good return, a good profit return. And I pay for Portaloos at Damnation, so I know the profit margins that go involved in it. But he was I didn't know him, so I was kind of trusting the process that he was going to come on and he'll just be like, yeah, man, I put on some Portaloos and people do a shit. I mean, I was banking in this guy being interested, and fuck, man, he blew the doors off it. He absolutely blew the doors off it. I think there's a newfound fame for him at 2,000 Trees now. He's going to be a lot of pats in the back, I'm sure.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. You know, the thing about it, when you're talking about the newfound respect, you know, and obviously the podcast being something to generate more attention, I think in a way, you know, so first of all, one thing that I really want to commend you on as a festival organizer as well as an entrepreneur is that you pretty much have one thing nailed down, which is the most important thing of them all when it comes to any business, and that's a relationship with the customers. Okay, so as far as festivals are concerned, you know, I've always seen different festivals have different groups or different things that they do, but I've never quite seen a community like the one that you've built with Damnation, where people are as invested as they are, which is very fascinating to me. I think that even if you're someone who's not a music fan, you can still look at that and maybe take a few pages from it. And I think that what's interesting is that what you're doing now with obviously the podcast, I think that even if it might not generate necessarily more people who know about the podcast or the festival, those same people that already knew about it, I think that it does invoke a sense of loyalty and appreciation that, okay, so this ticket that I'm going to buy in advance, which you guys are doing fantastic at the moment, this ticket that I'm going to buy in advance, these are the areas which it's fueling, which ultimately fuels my experience as well as thousands of other people, basically. So I just want to really commend you on that, because I think that you've, I mean, we can probably agree that that sense of community and the community that you build around your business is probably the thing that's going to ultimately drive the whole thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, first off, thank you for the kind words and recognising that it didn't come easy, and it wasn't an easy, because it's not like you're reinventing the wheel as such, but you're taking my personality and putting it into a sector that doesn't do that. That doesn't. We all try to be whatever the mini download is. We all try to follow whatever that's been shown before, because promoting's a weird one, because you wake up one day and you decide you're going to be a promoter. Now, I was a journalist for 20 years, and I went and studied journalism the way someone would go and study law or to be health or whatever, cop, and I knew the path, so you know what you're getting into. Someone wakes up one day and they say, I want to be a promoter, and no one tells you one way or the other. And also, it's a very cliquey little industry as well, and people don't like to help each other out, and they don't like to share their secrets or their experience, or a lot of people in this industry quite happy to see the next person fall over and flatten their face, which is, I've always found, quite depressing. So that's the first thing. You go into it and you're not quite sure where you are in the space, and I think that helped me a bit, because if there had been a promoting school and I had been indoctrinated into the way of what everyone else done, maybe I wouldn't have had the confidence just to be myself. But I found every time I get more and more comfortable being myself, the response was like a snowball effect. And the next thing you know, you're like, because here I was at, 2021, getting my download 2003, 2004 lineups in Kerrang each week. And I would just notice Sepultura would just disappear off the lineup. And then with no explanation why. And we just accepted it, because that's the way it was. And it always sat with me. Like, I was pretty pissed off with some of my favourite bands just disappearing off lineups, and there was no communication. Now, back then there wasn't Facebook or whatever, but for me, when I get it, like, let people know they're buying your product. They're your superheroes. I mean, they're no customers. They're the people that are giving you the absolute lifeline to do this. Like, communicate with them, treat them with respect, show them when they've got questions, answer them, give them the time of day. Stop hiding behind whatever it is you're hiding behind. Or if it's ego driven and you think I'm a promoter and you're someone who buys my product and you don't have the right to speak to me, then you're doing it backwards. And here we are with what's quite a niche underground extreme metal festival in the face of it, operating at an arena level. And you're right in what I believe a lot of that's down to the fan base buying into what we're trying to do, and the time that we give each day to go in there and answer every goddamn question that gets asked, even the stupid ones.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I think most festivals that you kind of go to, you do always get this feeling of the overarching kind of like the shadow elites that are behind the curtains, and then those are the people that are pulling the strings. They're the people to know if you're a band and you want to get noticed and you want to get booked. I think that part of it, I do kind of understand it, because as I've kind of come to discover this from just having the podcast, is that when you're someone who's in a position who could potentially help a band with any kind of exposure or with opportunities or with networking and things like that, bands do fucking swarm at you, okay? And this is something I never experienced before until I started this podcast. And then in the first year of the podcast, maybe not so much, but then in the 2 years after, so I've officially had it for 3 years pretty much today. I think my first episode came out 3 years ago. Was one thing that I've noticed. Thank you. Yeah, it's great. I started out just by telling ghost stories, and spooky shit, and then it kind of spiraled out of control. Maybe you can relate to that to an extent, but maybe not the ghost part, but the spiral out of control bit. But I can kind of appreciate the thing of, it becomes difficult to manage, it's like, how do I politely say no to these people, or do you just like no respond? Do you just ghost them? Like, how do you navigate that? So to an extent, I get the appeal of wanting to be hidden away, but I have much more respect and an admiration for you, not only being open out there in the world, but also putting out your own personality, you know. So it's almost like when you buy a Damnation ticket, you're almost getting that extension of the personality. It's essentially, even though you're a promoter, you're almost, I say almost, pretty much fully operating as an artist at the same time as well, just in a different vein, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I'd go for a step forward and say I'm operating as a fan, because that's the way that I view it. I operate as I'm a fan who took the plunge and said, right, okay, I'm going to do it. Because, I mean, no disrespect to myself, but I am completely useless. I mean, I have no artistic talent whatsoever. So I use the talent I've got. I take it being driven and ambitious to hire the likes of yourselves to come and put on fantastic shows at Damnation. So I get what you mean, and I appreciate it. In terms of the bands getting in touch, it's a double-edged sword. I try. I'm looking at my inbox at the moment, and a couple of bands today getting in touch, because there is no easy avenue with it, because it's like you get in touch and like, we would like to play Damnation, and we're like, firstly, that's a lovely gesture towards Damnation. It's a compliment that any band wants to come and play Damnation, but also there is, let's say in any given year, 28 slots. Of those 28 slots, almost definitely 26 of them are going to be named, recognised international touring bands. I mean, like, I think I made the example before. The band that opened up our second stage last year, the year before, was Distant from Holland. They have 250,000 monthly streams, and I'm not focused on monthly streams and what you can get on them or not. I'm just giving you the context of how difficult it is to get 250,000 monthly streams. They done a headline tour and sold out 300 cap rooms up and down the UK. They opened our second stage. It's difficult. It's difficult getting Damnation because we don't have 3 or 4 days. We don't have 3 or 4 stages. We don't have 5 or 6 stages, I should say. And it's tough. You come back to these bands that are a bit like, why won't you give us a chance? Like, do you think you're too good for us? Like, no, I don't think I'm too good for you at all. But you go back and you say, look, give you that example of Distant, and they come back and say, aye, but they'll give you X, Y, and Z. So you say, I'm not going to be the guy who ignores the band. So you reply when you don't really have any time to reply, because they're coming through from every angle. And then what you do is that spawns a reply. And then you just go, at some point you need to like cut the rope and say, look, ultimately you'll get to a stage that you make so much noise and you're so in demand that I'll come to you. That's the thing to do. We'll come to you. Every promoter's like, get to the stage that you're making enough noise that we are the ones chasing you, not vice versa. Because Damnation is really not the platform to be like, oh, let's have your first big gig. I mean, if you have not got a couple of albums out, if you haven't done a headline tour in the UK, you haven't went out and supported and played some of the major festivals in Europe, you haven't done Inferno or Roadburn, it's a tough ask to go into a festival like Damnation with so few slots and the bands we've got. I mean, it's just a tough ask, and I don't want to be arrogant about that. I don't want to come across as arrogant with it, but that's the way. I'm sorry, it's just the way it is. It's, in a lot of cases, it's easier to get on Bloodstock and it's easier to get on Download even than it is to get a slot at Damnation, because we don't have any slots to give.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a very important thing there. We actually, in Iran, we say this thing, which we say, someone's not going to give you something because they're in love with your eyes and your eyebrows, you know? And that's basically the context here. So if you look at it, I really, really hope that there are younger bands or developing bands listening to this right now, or artists. I always try and kind of advocate for that, you know, because I was once also in a position as a band where you're like, oh, why are we not on that festival? Why are we not there? You know, and then as time kind of goes on, you spend enough time in the industry, you learn how things actually operate. You learn that, oh yeah, that's a promoter who's literally like risking his bank account for you to go on stage for 30 minutes and play songs that you wrote. So it's kind of like... the way I look at it is the following, and this is why I always advocate to younger bands, whether through the podcast or in person, is that you don't want promoters to book you just as a favor to give you a breakthrough, but instead you want them to book you. Why? Because you bring value to their event. You bring value to the lineup. You bring value to the people who are buying their tickets and wanting to see something and be impressed by. And the more you focus on that, the less you'll also be upset if you're not on every single fucking festival that there is, you know?
Yeah, I mean, my co-host James made a great point as well when he's got this issue with obviously his events is you don't want the slot before you're not ready, because the chances are it might be your only chance, or maybe you'll get 2 in 6 years. You do not want to go on that stage until you're ready to blow the place away. So don't go up there and think that getting a slot in ArcTanGent, getting a slot in Bloodstock, getting a slot at Download or Damnation, it's not your silver bullet. You're not a bigger band the next day. What you need to do is have that everything's so tied down by the time you do that. You're playing a full room, because we can't, as promoters, force the fans to go to the venue that you're playing, into the tent that you're playing. So you get a lot of these festivals where the lesser known bands, okay, they've got to the big old outdoor festival, but they're playing to 160 people in a 5,000 capacity tent. You know what I mean? And where did that get them? Nowhere. And what don't they have now? The opportunity to play that at a festival in the next 5 years, possibly, unless they. So don't record an EP and just say, oh, well, what I need now is to be on Damnation. You don't need to be on Damnation. You need to go and get some tools, probably some good supports to start with, prove your worth, do a headline. That the real test for every band is their first UK headline tour, because then everyone knows exactly where you are. Be it Harriet, Pupil Slicer, Svalbard, a Sun's Journey Through the Night. That's when the promoters, because your agent will definitely be going, we are 200 tickets in London. That's what we are. And now we're gauging that, and that's what our fee needs to be. That's what you need. You don't need this idea of just, the festivals aren't going to make your career for you. They might help, but definitely get yourself into a position that you're ready to be helped. Not just, oh, I got a favour, I've done it. Because it's not going to help. I promise you that, because I've seen it. And I've seen it at festivals where it was a complete waste of time. I've seen bands play to empty tents that were less useful for their career than playing a local bar.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that's actually very true. Yeah. And another thing is that the material that you currently have, is that also worthy of going up there, you know, because that's like the artist's curse as well. It's like that album that you currently have out now, are you actually really happy with that, where you think it's worth going on Damnation or playing Bloodstock and all these festivals with it? You know, because that's one thing that I look back at now. Our second album only came out in 2023. And this is obviously, I say this with respect to all of the promoters who booked us and everyone who had us play their events. And of course, we had some great times before that, but I almost think that, I can't believe people even gave us a chance before that, you know? And it's but here's the thing, I don't need to be told who Trivax are. And why is that? It's not because you're sitting in my inbox. It's not because you've been going, can I have a slot, can I have a slot? I know who Trivax are, but the main reason, because I know how all these bands are, it shows up on the forum or some of the social media that I follow, and you get people continually asking. Now, that's then cool. You're one of 100 bands in the UK that have never played Damnation who I would happily give a slot and know would do well. But who else hasn't ever actually done Damnation? Harriet, Pupil Slicer, Unfathomable Ruination. I mean, these bands are bands that have toured, get headlines. For sure,
it's not just a case. So sometimes you get that, and the reason I'm being quite defensive about this is because you do get that offended band member who gets in touch like, why won't you just give us a chance? And you're like, where do you want me to give you a chance? It's like the slots aren't there. I mean, you talk about some of my favourite bands that took me years and years and years to finally take a plunge with, and that was after they'd went out and done whatever they could do. So, it's a tough ask. It's a tough ask, to be honest.
And the other thing, at the end of the day, and you know, this may seem a bit harsh, but it's the reality of it, and it's that you don't owe anyone a slot at the end of the day.
That's also true. That is also true. And you get the ones, you know, you mentioned it before, everyone, I don't know if they think that the promoter's always the enemy and promoter's always the guy that rubs their hands together and all the money's there. But I tell you, I put on Damnation 2023 and I had Enslaved and Leprous and Electric Wizard and lost money. So I know what it's like to be successful at this game and make money, and I know what it's like to have a successful festival and lose money and have a band at the other side of that telling you, well, if you just booked this band, then I'd have sold some tickets. Like, maybe. But
Yeah.
the 6 tickets you'd have sold would have made zero difference to the £500,000 budget that Damnation was that year.
Yeah. You know what? I want to ask you a question, and maybe this is a bit of a personal one, but I'm just really interested to hear your perspective, because I can see that you're a go-getter, you're a no bullshit guy, high energy, high intensity. And by the way, I fucking love that in people, just saying. And one thing that I want to ask you is, obviously as a family man, when you're a family man, you have responsibilities. You've got other people to feed, you've got other people to cater to and look after. And that's a responsibility that as a man you just can't run away from, and you shouldn't run away from either. So when it comes to being a promoter, that's risky business. That's a very risky business. So how do you kind of navigate those waters? Because it's something like I would imagine if I was in your position that you've got a family to look after, and then you're also dealing with an agent over here that's just trying to like milk you for everything that you have, or you know the examples, you know it better than I do. But how do you kind of navigate that balance and maintain almost just a sane kind of a mindset going into it and just trying to make the whole thing work?
I mean, first off, with agent, you start a podcast and then destroy them. That's what you do. You have weekly therapy with another promoter, absolutely destroying them. That's how you deal with agent side. But I get the more serious aspect of your question. I mean, the listeners of your podcast will have absolutely no idea who I am or my background. But I was a journalist 20 years. The last 6 years of that, I was a daily newspaper editor. I got myself into a position at the age of 40. I would have been good salary, company car, couple of months a year holiday, and a job that I loved. I wanted to be a journalist when I went to college. So I was in a job that I loved, and then the pandemic happened, and I found myself in a job that I absolutely hated. Working exactly from this room where I'm talking to you, trying to put out a daily newspaper with staff that were dotted all over the west of Scotland, and I just hated it. And plus, journalism is becoming that way that everything's just driven by clicks and traffic now, so it almost doesn't matter. I mean, I know that anyone listening to this probably doesn't have high regard for journalists, but at least when in my experience of doing local journalism, it was the truth until it just got to the point that clicks were more important. So I took that plunge to take Damnation on full time in 20. What would that have been? The year that I lost money. The first year that I ever properly lost money was the year that I took it on for full time. I mean, that was his own head scratcher. Wow. So, you know what? You just have to believe in it, don't you? You have to believe. You describe as a go-getter. I mean, maybe that's what I'm. And ultimately, I was in a position for the first time in my life at the age of 40, 41, that I was doing something I no longer loved, and I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. So ultimately, I'm going to put all my eggs in the Damnation basket, and we're either going to make an omelette, or I'm going back to some sort. I mean, I've got transferable skills. I can go back to journalism tomorrow if I needed to. So I'm glad that we had the Damnation. It just happened there. That'd be 2024, which was a financial success, and we're back in track again. This year's sales are fantastic, so it looks like we're going to do well again this year. And I don't need a lot of money to get through. I don't get Ferraris parked outside and helicopter journeys, you know what I mean? So my wife does just fine. I've done just fine previously. I had savings to get me through the bad year. As long as Damnation makes a standard salary for me, then I'm ticky to boo.
That's excellent to hear, man. I love that approach, and the reason why I bring this up as well, I think it's important for people to hear, might not be necessarily being a promoter, might not necessarily be anything in particular, but it's just the thought of dare to fail. Okay, you want to do something, fucking go and do it. I love that. Yeah, and I hope, because you clearly have a lot of like extreme music listeners, and then you obviously have the artists that tune into your podcast as well. It's like, I hope that a lot of folk get that for the promoter side of you. There's so many things like this tie-in with Ticketmaster and the 4 tiers of the tickets that go to, but the first tier that have pretended it's sold out actually had 2 tickets in it, and then instantly go to tier 2 anyway. Like, I don't operate in any of that bullshit. Damnation doesn't do that. We don't screw people over. You get what it says in the tin, and as you said previously, I think that people buy into that, and sometimes you might have a fan that's got your back
who might otherwise not be that excited about your lineup that year. They might not be thinking that Damnation's floating his boat, would much rather go to Cosmic Void or Fortress or Incineration, but they've got your back because they know that the guy at the other side of it is me, the dad of three, who's being honest as fuck about, I just could not get the headliner you wanted. I couldn't get Behemoth. I tried, couldn't get him. What do you want me to do? I can't force the guy to come to the stage, you know what I mean? So there's a bit of that.
Yeah, no, that transparency is absolutely golden, man, you know. And I think that the thing is as well, the transparency on its own wouldn't mean anything had you not also pulled off many different editions of the festival successfully. I think the first one that I came to was the one in 2017. If I remember, I think you had Bloodbath playing it that year. And a bunch of other great bands, and Sodom as well.
You picked a good one. Bloodbath, Sodom, Paradise Lost, Dying Fetus, Warning, Agoraphobic Nosebleed, Nails, Dragged into Sunlight. I mean, that was a good fucking year.
That was a good fucking year. Yeah. That's right. Yes, that's the first time I saw Nails. And the last time I saw them was this year. Holy fuck, what a show that was. Holy shit.
Did you see Dragged into Sunlight this year?
Yes, I did. Yeah. I saw them.
So are you in the camp? It was like the greatest thing that ever happened, or are you like, it was fine?
Well, I'm actually kind of in the middle. You know, like I like it. You know, I like what they do. But as someone who is interested, I'm okay. We're being honest here, aren't we? So, as someone who is interested in showmanship and putting on a show for people. I don't fully vibe with a frontman, especially having their back to the crowd. Okay.
Yeah.
That's an area where I'm kind of like, you know, and I think those guys kind of pull it off, but you have to be in the right mood for it. For me, as someone, you know, I've also, you know, like I appreciate psychedelics and I understand that aspect of, you know, I love Pink Floyd, okay? You don't need Pink Floyd to come and scream in your face for their music to work. You can just sit back and just get drowned in the sonic element of it. I can see that applying to Dragged into Sunlight. But I have to be in the right mood for it, you know? So that's why I'm kind of like in the middle. Like I appreciate it, but, you know, depends on what state of mind I'm in.
It's a lot because it's one of those ones you never decide by yourself, and it becomes that part of instant folklore that when you're walking away with it, and then everyone else independently saying, was that the greatest thing that I've ever seen at a Damnation? At the time for me to even have that question and walk away and have other people saying the same thing, and then to sit back and reflect and go, well, was it fun though? Did I enjoy it? I don't know if I enjoyed it. I don't know if it was fun. I mean, it wasn't as fun as watching Julie Christmas and the Cult of Luna do Mariner. Absolutely not. It wasn't as fun as Dillinger's Escape Plan. Absolutely not. But did I feel more from it? Was it more of an experience? Possibly. You know what I mean? It was like a lot of things had to come together to get that group of, as they put it, herding cats onto that stage to do that. And the fact that it came from almost nowhere and then pulled that off was pretty spectacular itself. But that's not what you asked. You were talking about Nails, and Nails was pandemonium. It was just, I was looking at the security bill thinking, oh my God, I hope they're worth every penny here, because people are getting absolutely wiped out. I mean, full grown big bears. I mean, you're a big boy yourself, but there was big bears in that pit absolutely wiping each other out. And I was like, fuck.
Yeah, I may or may not have kind of gone in there towards the end, and it was cool, you know. Like I don't get into pits normally, you know, because you know I just like not smelling like sweat. That's kind of like the main part of it, you know. The
one good. I mean, genuinely good thing about Damnation as well, the crowd is good people. You know what I mean? Like,
100%.
I've done this now for 20 years, and that year there was the best part of 5,000 folk in there. There's no instance. Like, people are not out to hurt each other. They're out to look after each other. It's a good crowd. People, we don't really get any real concern. I mean, people are going to get injured. You're going to get dropped in your head sometimes. You're going to go face first against them when you're moshing the nails. You're going to get hurt, but not anything intentional or malicious. And it's amazing to have that amount of people in one room with that intensity for 12 hours and no one to take a drunken funny turn or turn it. It's like it really, it's not applauded even by myself as much as it should be. Just how utterly fantastic that crowd is.
They absolutely are, because I've been there, and I've seen that, all the way from the one I mentioned in 2017 all the way up until now. Like I said, it's rare you'll see me in a mosh pit, but I went into the Nails one, and everyone's great, everyone's a good sport. I like that bleeding through. I don't know if you were there when they did the mosh pit for women only. Were you there for that one?
I was up in the balcony watching that set, but I never realised they'd done one of the mosh pits for women only. So
yeah,
the 2 and 10 that go to Damnation were like, okay.
No, I actually thought it was cool, because they were kind of a nostalgic band for me as well, both for me and my fiance. She's a big fan of them as well, and then we were just watching them, and it was cool, man. They brought a good energy. But also, what other fucking festival you would go to where you've got Nails and then Bleeding Through back to back on main stage? It's just kind of like, it's such a niche, isn't it? I love it. It's great.
That's what we do. I mean, I suppose that's all you've got. I mean, to be honest with you, you're not competing with the big boys. I mean, you look at, like, Damnation's a bigger festival than Inferno in terms of just numbers that going through, right? But Inferno put on a lineup that we cannot financially compete with. We cannot have Emperor and Cannibal Corpse in the same night. It's just financially impossible unless your tickets are going to be £200 each. They clearly get huge grants and good funding for the Norwegian government and are well supported by the state. We're not. We've just got 3 layers of tax on top of us and getting held down by the UK government. And ultimately, for us to stand on our feet at all, we need to have these wee unicorns, these wee European exclusive Bleeding Throughs and European exclusive Nails to stand a chance. We need to be creative, because we cannot pay the money that it takes to get that Emperor show and then put beside it the Cannibal Corpse show.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true. Although in the case of Inferno, because I do some of the conferences there. Well, I've only just started since last year, and I'm going back this year. I've got a couple of panels to do there. The way, I mean, they've got a pretty good system there. Have you actually been to the festival?
Yeah, I was on one of the panels.
Oh yeah, of course.
Boutique. It was an oddly named panel. Boutique festivals, I think it was, which doesn't describe Damnation very well. But yes, I'm invited to go across this year, but my wife's going in for a bit of surgery, which I'm not going to make it. So unfortunately, I won't be there. But what a unbelievably well put together event, and you can see where that funding goes. They use it well. It's fantastic.
Absolutely, yeah. But the other, so that's great to hear. The other thing that I kind of wanted to mention as well is the ticket prices they're like download prices. I think by the time you go through the conversion, I think it's like, what is it like? So I think it works out something like 250, 300 quid thereabouts.
Oh, really? For Inferno?
It's not cheap. Yeah.
I suppose nothing in Norway is cheap though, is it? It's like that's probably like 60, 70 quid equivalent to what a Damnation would be. But sure. And even still, I mean, I think their main room is it 1,500 to 2,000 capacity, their main room? At
Rockefeller, yeah, thereabouts. It's not absolutely huge. Yeah, when Dimmu played last year, their backdrop was actually too big for the venue.
I mean, to put that in context, Damnation can't afford Dimmu. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We couldn't book that band. So that's the levels that we're talking about in terms of what money's involved. And by all means, big Keir Starmer, you might come and get show Damnation a wee bit of backing. Yeah, I'll take a cut just in the VAT. I don't even need anything from you. Just give me a cut in the VAT, and I'll go and book you a wee Dimmu as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think you're in that position where it's almost like, I mean, the lineup this year so far is absolutely fucking killer, and you've not even announced the whole thing yet, like not even close. And yet, so many people wanting to go because you're at that level where people want to go for the experience of the festivals and not so much even the names on the poster at this point, right?
Well, I hope. I mean, you're always saying, the truth is, when people are supportive of you, they're quite vocal of it. And we have built such a nice community on the forum as well. It's unfortunate that it happens to be on Facebook. I wish there was a way to transplant that to somewhere else more fitting for Damnation. But Facebook is what we have, and that's what we're dealing with at the moment. So that forum is so positive that you hear a lot of the positivity and a lot of the people that are there and support you through. But the truth, there is no denying, no getting away from it. Is lineup dependent. You will get 1,000 fans who will support Damnation blind, who will just buy their ticket tomorrow for whatever Damnation's putting on next. And we absolutely cherish that and make sure we never abuse that trust. So that's the first bit. And then you get the rest of it. Ultimately, another 5,000 tickets is your lineup. If there's 1,000 people that are there to support you regardless, and then let's say there's about 3,000 people that are on the fence ready to support you, but it better be bands that they like. And then you probably get the last couple of thousand are they Cradle of Filth fans? Are they Converge fans? Are they Carcass fans? And that's where you get your makeup. So you need to, with the best will, with the greatest support in the world and the best will in the world, Damnation without the names that we provide is a 1,000 capacity event. So you need to make sure you're paying the money and get the bands in.
Yeah, of course. I think that, yeah, there's of course that side of it as well, you know, and you guys, you know, have, as far as I'm concerned, never failed to deliver on that. By the way, I'm just looking something up here because I wanted to share this with you, and I just remembered, you know, because we're talking about the difficulties of being a promoter and, you know, some of the intricacies of it. And since I guess you guys haven't discussed this on your own podcast yet, I figured I'd ask you. I don't even know if you know about it. Are you aware of that festival that just got cancelled in Brazil?
No.
Oh my God. Okay. So this is really fucking interesting. I'm just trying to look it up here because, interestingly enough, you and I were talking about Panzerfaust earlier. Yep. Great fucking guys, by the way. I know that you said that a lot of people on the Damnation forum had been requesting these guys, which I would say if you get the opportunity, you should definitely book them. But there's a festival happening in Brazil. It was supposed to be happening. What day is it today? So today, yeah, it was supposed to be happening this weekend, right? Yeah. I think, is it the MAD? Yeah, MAD Metal Fest. Right, so it was a black metal fest. They had Uwada, Nargaroth, whatever. But yeah, like they had Panzerfaust, Eotheria, a bunch of bands, and I think what's happened, from my understanding, is that the promoter has actually had allegedly a mental breakdown. And he's basically cancelled the whole fest and cancelled all the band's flights and everything last minute. And a bunch of bands are already like left in Brazil, like with basically cancelled flights and shit. So that was an eventful thing that I think happened.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at a pulled that in front of me just as you were chatting me through it as well. It's like, see, that's nightmare fuel. As a promoter, that really is absolute nightmare fuel. I mean, my initial reactions, I suppose, I mean, you booked that funeral, well, that's probably going to happen, but it's fuck me, man. It's because, so that's, the festival's cancelled, and there's also a Dark Funeral event cancelled at the same time, I assume by the same promoter. So
I wonder, yeah.
That's hard. You know what? It's difficult because this is not an industry that can be supported by contracts and legal disputes. Until you get to the levels of, I don't know, Gojira to Metallica, where we're operating, the space we're operating, for anyone to try and contractually sue you, it costs more than the entire booking process of even a band that you would consider to be quite a big band that you've paid 5 or 10 grand for. Now think about how you would go about the recourse of it. You would be in the UK, try to sue a band from America through a court of jurisdiction in Germany, which is where the booking took place. How the hell are you going to manage that? I mean, where would you start? Yeah. The legal fees would be insane. So what the whole industry at our level needs is trust, and that both parties want the same thing. That the black metal band that's coming to Damnation wants to play Damnation as much as Damnation wants to have them. And see, when you don't have that, and it's usually ticket sales, whatever the excuse is for a lot of mental breakdowns, are ticket sales weren't as good as what they wanted them to be. That's where the problem is, because you get a lot of these bands that just arrive. We had Manifest in the UK. We had the other one. I remember, yeah. I remember that. There was the one in Dominion. So 2 within the space that it started, tried to go outdoors. I mean, first off, you can't go outdoors and do an event for much less than £1 million straight away. So if you don't have that in your back bin, don't think about it. And don't go into it with zero money in your bank account and just hope that you're going to get enough ticket sales in and get the advance and then rob Peter to pay Paul, because that's suicide. And what they done is Manifest collapsed, and then you had a band like Eternal Champion already flying in to come to the UK, and I picked them up and put them on a show in Glasgow. Some other people picked them up, put other shows on about the UK. But this is exactly what this example is here. You just find bands in the UK landing with nowhere to sleep that night. And then what happens? Everybody gets done, because then we've had 10 years of no mishaps and everyone just getting kind of comfortable in the whole trust situation. And when I say I'm going to pay you 10 grand, you're going to get paid 10 grand. And you don't need to try and get 5 grand out of me 8 months in advance, because you know I'm going to pay you the 10 grand. And when you arrive, you're going to get what you agreed to in your contract. You're going to fly back. But as soon as one of these occasions happen, you notice instantly as one of the promoters, be it Bloodstock, ArcTanGent, Download, the agents freeze up, and then suddenly it's all 50% deposit. Can you sign that contract and send it back to me? And it has a ripple effect through the whole industry, because this is a major problem for UADA. This is a major problem for Nagaroff. No, I mean, it's like they have fucking lost, I don't know, 8 grand this weekend by being stuck homeless in Brazil and trying to get their own flights back. So the next time you can guarantee Cosmic Void comes to get him next year, there's going to be a whole new level of, you better get the payments up front. You better do, it's exhausting. It's exhausting because you know how it affects the folk that were always paying the fee to start with.
Yeah, absolutely, man. 100%. It's a very important insight to have for that. And as far as the band side of it is concerned, you know, one thing that I always recommend bands to do is to have a savings account. Okay, so if you're like, you kind of actually have to do that basically at this point. You know, like if you get booked, for example, with us, when we get booked, for example, European, like just fly-in shows. Okay. So for those, you need to ideally book your flights, and promoters abroad don't know anything other than London. They don't know that there's a Bristol, there's a Manchester, there's all these different ones, you know, like they just know London. So it's better if you just book your flights yourself, use your savings, and then just get reimbursed for it when the festival kind of rolls around. You know, that's kind of what we've done, at least since I've actually been able to travel, you know.
How's it been for you? What's the worst situation you found yourself in?
You mean financially, or in terms of travel?
Have you found yourself in Romania and you show up and the gates are shut and you're sitting there with your drummer and then going, holy shit, fuck it, guys, we're fucked?
Luckily, we have never been in that position. You know, the thing for us is, I think with Trivex, we kind of have, our background kind of already changes, I think, not only our approach, but I think other people's kind of appreciation of what we are doing, you know, because at least for myself personally, you know, I am someone who grew up in a country and became a metalhead and became a musician in a country where you're not supposed to play metal to begin with, okay? Yep. Not only that, you can go to fucking jail for it, or you can even have your life threatened because of the music that you play. And I played actual underground illegal shows over there, you know. Yeah. And there's a story of our first show here, which I've told many times. It's ad nauseum, you know, where we played a school with Trivex in February 2011, and they actually set the school on fire halfway through because the kids got fucking crazy and some shit. And I thought when I saw the smoke, I thought it was the tear gas from the police breaking in, you know.
You see, no, I left Glasgow to go to Dumfries and Galloway at 19, right? So you leaving Iran to come to UK at 17, that's like a top trump. You've definitely won that game. So credit to you. When you get your band, so you're Iranian, but the rest of the guys, are those English?
So my bass player, he is from Syria, and he shares a very similar background. He was actually arrested by some of Assad's goons and was basically tortured as an 18-year-old for playing in a Metallica cover band because somehow they thought he was going to overthrow the government, which, looking in hindsight, he had a really rough time there, but looking in hindsight, it's kind of ironic because Assad himself just like fled the country like a few months ago, so it's kind of like, I don't know. There's a lot of very questionable things about it, but yeah. So him and I, we kind of share that passion and background, you know, all we wanted to fucking do was just play, you know. We didn't think about like, oh, it has to be this or guarantee this or that. No, we literally just wanted to fucking play, you know, just have the freedom to play. Now anything else is a bonus. And one thing that we always try and do is just maintain that knowledge and understanding. Now, not to the point where people take the piss either, you know, because we do have something valuable. We are actually a very good fucking live band, and we do bring something to the table. But also at the same time, we always maintain that understanding that it's it's a bastardized word, but it is a blessing just to be able to go on stage and fucking breathe and perform this music without, you know, fucking getting attacked by all kinds of authorities and governments and people. Our drummer is also from Birmingham, by the way. So that's kind of like that's kind of the background of Trivex. But yeah, luckily so far, so it's only in the last year and a half, 2 years-ish, where we've had a lot of our restrictions lifted because all of the members of the band, you know, me actually, ironically, being the last one, who can actually travel freely, being able to go abroad, you know. So we've now finally been able to accept shows for, like, we've played Romania, played Germany a bunch of times already, been to Netherlands, played Italy last year. We've got Barcelona coming up, so it's finally happening, you know. But it's
So what's the case? You know, you get that we are not traditionally, and I hate this as a promoter, we're not great to our band. It's like, you know, it's like we're so keen to fly in a band from America and pour praising them, yet we've got an ackercock here that struggled for 25 years and couldn't get anyone to show up. Raging Speed Hall and Stamping Grounds, and now we're getting this now with your next wave of British bands coming through that are just continually being trumped by any band from Europe or America. So where's the big in Japan moment for you? Where do you go that you get a bit of respect that you deserve?
Ooh, you know, it's a really tough one to say. I think Germany is always a good one, you know, like without fail, every single time, because we've been over there a few times now in different regions. We actually headlined this really small festival there called Azadi Festival, you know, that was actually about the Iranian cause, you know, and the fight of the Iranian people against the government, which is kind of like weird combining that with black metal, but also I think it makes perfect fucking sense, you know. And we've never been that traditional like spike wearing, bullet belt wearing, corpse paint black metal anyway. We've never been that, we never will be. It's just not my jam, you know. Yes, I know your views on that. But the thing is that Germany's good. But the thing is, you know, like we always have this kind of thing of like, oh, the grass is greener on the other side, you know. So for us, you know, we were basically stuck inside the UK. I say stuck, it was a privilege just to be able to play and tour, but we were kind of stuck. We couldn't go anywhere else. And you know what the UK is like. If you play it too much, people just start to fucking hate you, you know. So it was kind of a difficult position for us to be in as a band. But you know, when you've played the UK, when you've played the Black Heart so many times, and when promoters give you fucking bread and crisps for your rider, and you know, and the cheapest fucking like 49p energy drinks, and then you go to Europe, and then you've got a fucking meat platter waiting there and a sound check, and oh, let me take you to your hotel for a shower before you go to the airport. It's a bit of a like, you know, you do kind of get that, but at the end of it, that's not why we started to do this. We started to do this because we want to go on stage, turn on the fucking amplifier, and kick everyone's ass. So that's ultimately the thing that matters, you know.
Yeah, it's funny because I had a previous podcast through the pandemic called Damnation Versus, and you would have the music, you'd have artists on, and it'd be me interviewing the artists, and you always had, it didn't matter if it was Ghostbath or Napalm Death or fucking Anon Athrak or Pig Destroyer, it was always that stepping. It was like, America is the worst shithole. Yeah. But like you don't get the 49 pence. I mean, basically you get shown up and you get told you're allowed on that stage for 30 minutes, then you better get out my venue before you're finished, right? So when you come to the UK, it's like, oh my god, the hospitality, these guys are unbelievable. And then you go to Europe, and you're like, I am actually God. I've got a hotel and a shower. And then you go to Japan, and you're like, maybe I own this country. I mean, like, why is everyone being so goddamn nice? Why have I got my own personal driver and my band that plays to 50 people in Birmingham? It's like, and it just every time I had people on, I was always like, so how was your experience of that? It was always the same. America, the most god awful worst. UK, Europe, then Japan. Japan was the get there if you can because you're going to feel like Metallica.
I would love to. I would absolutely love to because I'm actually personally quite fascinated with Japanese culture as well. But that's hilarious that you say that, you know, like, I mean, I have had, you know, like we do have some horror stories from like the first few years of the band in the UK where we were like playing our first shows, not knowing really how any of it works. You're just kind of navigating the waters. And really as a band, I think you need to play minimum 100 shows before you even know what the fuck you're doing on stage. I really think that, you know, and obviously we have done that now. But I'll tell you a fucking story. So this is year 2014. Okay, we have 2 EPs out at this point, right? It's November. It's the first time I ever met our bass player Sully. You know, the guy I mentioned who's from Syria. Yeah. And he was playing in this other band at the time. And then we shared the stage with those guys. And we were kind of like talking on Facebook a little bit at the time. And at the time also, you know, I may have been a little bit psychotic. You know, I still had the black metal edgelord aspect to my personality at that point, which is long gone, but it was there at that point. Okay, so yeah. I'm not denying that. And that's actually important for the context of the story. We played this real fucking shithole in Sheffield. And the sound guy was fucking off his tits, like he was drunk the whole time, okay? And then my amp wasn't working, and then like we already had like 15-minute cut from the set, you know, and we drove from Birmingham. That's when Tribex was based in Birmingham. And then, you know, fuel must have cost what, like maybe 30 quid at the time or something like that, thereabouts, I think. And obviously our set gets cut short. We play the show, come off stage. Promoter comes up to me, this skinny guy, he comes up and then gives me an envelope with £3 coins in it, okay? And that's our payment for the show, you know?
Welcome to the metal world, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. all the glamour. All the glamour. So, me being, I would never. This is not how I would conduct myself today. Just, I'm stressing on that. But I kind of lost my shit, and I may or may not have started trashing the fucking venue. Okay, starting with the hand dryer in the toilets. That thing came right off the wall, went straight in the toilet. All the pig's blood that we had started going everywhere, you know, and I think they were, so it was something like, I think the sound guy was like trying to call the police or something, but like they were trying to, you know, they realized that I'd kind of smashed the place up, and then I ran to the car, and we just fucking took off, and that was the end of that chapter. So wearing my promoter's hat in the shitty wee Sheffield venue, was there a pre-agreed deal, or did you just expect to have more?
That's a great question because I can't fucking remember now that I think about it. I think
maybe
the guys
you were overpaid £3.
You know what, Gav? That is entirely possible. Yes.
the guy took like £9 at the door and they said, right, okay, I'll split it between the bands and you get your £3. You're like, you know what? I'm going to fucking trash your joint.
Yeah, you know what? I think I've given enough disclaimers here. I'm not proud of that kind of behavior. I do not encourage it. I think that the venue had absolutely nothing to do with it. But it was just, you know, just for the reference to that promoter, it would have been a lot better if he didn't pay us at all. That's all I'm saying.
Of course. I mean, I can imagine. You don't play Damnation. I don't get anybody plays Damnation for less than, it's like £100, and like I feel the lowest slot on the third stage, and that's with your rider and backline and all the techs you need and everything else that goes along with Damnation. So I am not showing up at any point and handing £3 coins to a fucking band.
It's just like
self-respect of nothing else.
Yeah. Yeah, like who the fuck does that? I mean, imagine doing anything, and it's the fact that like that envelope itself probably already cost like 20p, you know. So it's kind of.
I just at that point, because don't get me wrong, I've done. Listen, Damnation's one thing, but I've also done. I've had Watain in Glasgow, Wolves in the Throne Room in Glasgow, Cult of Luna, Electric Wizard. I've had with the support bands, and that's a conversation in itself. Did that support band buy onto the tour? Were they worth anything in the tour? Whatever. And I've had some support bands be pretty aggressive towards me, which isn't always the best. Which isn't always the best advice to give anyone. Never mind the fucking support band.
I would not want to be aggressive against a guy who grew up in Glasgow and benches
but they're like,
whatever.
They've got it. They've like, you know what we think, whatever we've came here from, we're Sweden, and we're losing $5,000 in this tour, and here you are, and you've gave us some waters and beers, and where's our hot meal? You know what I mean? And you're like, guys, the show's lost £800. It's like and you've bought into this tour. I don't even know who you are. I mean, the waters and beers are like, you should look at them as fucking being appreciative. No, obviously, I never brought you from Sweden. I didn't want you on this fucking show, but here you are. So it's a murky world, and everyone's got a different. I've said this before, even in the podcast we do. It's like when something doesn't work, a show doesn't go right. The artist blames the promoter blames the artist, the fans blame the fucking venue, the promoter blames the management, the agent charged too much, and it's just who's really at fault? Probably a combination of all of the above. You know what I mean? If the show's not done well, everyone involved in it probably didn't play their part right. And especially in this industry, it's just far too quick to point towards whatever part of that cog that you know and just blame that. And more often than not, because the management and agents are quietly in the background, the promoter gets it in the neck.
Yeah,
and sometimes
absolutely.
rightly so, because a lot of promoters are cunts as well.
Yeah, well, this is true. Yeah, I agree. I actually think what you're saying is really important because we kind of had that a little bit with the post-pandemic era of music, you know, where bands would or promoters would constantly book something but then cancel it. So it reduced people's faith in wanting to buy pre-sales. You know, we know this, and you can kind of actually see the blowback effect of it now quite severely.
We're still recovering from that. And then you try to start Damnation now, even in the exact same circumstance, but where it is right now in 2025, not possible. It's not possible. No one is buying your tickets for your first year's festival until that fucking thing happens. You better be at the weekend with balls the size of walnuts to fucking, I mean melons, balls the size of melons to be even thinking about trying to start a festival, because no one is. See, when we started in 2005, people trusted when something went on at a poster, it was actually going to happen. See that whole pandemic stretch where people just get dipped and dipped and dipped, even if it was just booking fees, just continually someone else was in their pocket, some part of this industry was in their pocket taking their money, and they weren't getting what they were paying for in good faith. And once that happened to you, it doesn't matter if it's Rage Against the Machine or your fucking Infernal Sea Show, you've been stung, and you're like, you know when I'm going to buy my ticket? On the door. And I'm going to buy my ticket today. And that is the knock-on effect is no promoter can work with tickets getting bought on the door at any level. Maybe a pub. Above that, you need to have some security that people are going to show up to your show. So I totally agree. We are still feeling the after effects of how shows were promoted and cancelled right through that pandemic and post-pandemic period.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that I've noticed, you know, so I was actually speaking to a friend of mine. She's actually promoting our show, because we're actually doing I don't know if you've seen it. We're actually doing like an extreme metal warm-up show for the Sabbath gig in Birmingham on the Friday, the day before. And I was talking to her about it, you know, and we're expecting that it's probably going to do well. It's only at the Flapper, you know, so not like a massive capacity, you know. I'm actually expecting it'll sell out. But But she actually mentioned when I was designing the poster, because if we do like the odd headlines, I like to design my own posters, and for this one I was going for like a classic Sabbath, it's kind of like a psychedelic 70s look for it, I'm quite proud of how it turned out actually. But she actually mentioned to me, she said, I asked her, I said, so do you want, how much is it advance, how much is it on the door? And she said, don't even bother mentioning what it is on the door, just put the advance price on there, A, because we're hoping that's where it's gonna go, but B, it sort of, people can, it just makes it easier for them to justify waiting and then buying on the day.
Don't even put the idea. Don't even put the idea.
That's it.
I mean, it's like Damnation's never had an on the door price ever. It's like, because that's not the objective. I mean, even though that, can't remember the last time, it was 2019, the last time a Damnation legitimately sold out. But you don't even let that enter the head. I mean, it's like, buy today. I mean, we don't bullshit. We don't lie about where our ticket sales are. That's its own cost, because ultimately, when we do the ticket tracker and you see it's only at a quarter away, there's no push for you to go and get your ticket. But the reason that we stick with it, even when it's almost a counterproductive marketing tool, is because people trust in it. So the years that we are selling and we tell you there's 100 tickets left, there is 100 tickets left. And we have seen what that does when you tell people this will sell it this weekend. The 100 people go and buy their tickets, as opposed to the tickets selling fast, going to sell it this weekend. Fucking cancels 2 weeks later. Nobody bought a ticket, you know what I mean? So, I'm with you. No, I totally agree with whoever gave you that advice, because just put it in people's head there. Support it now. Don't worry about what's on the door. This isn't a bring your own bottle, 3 grindcore bands doing their first show. Like, buy your ticket now and support it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. And it's really, like, it frustrates me sometimes. It really does, because I was talking to someone the other day and he was like, oh, I wouldn't pay 120 quid for a concert. That's just too much to me. And this is someone who's like a big music fan. And I was thinking, like, you can literally like you can spend that just on a weekly grocery shopping. Okay. You can spend...
We're terrible for it. We are really... I saw a thread that I didn't even want to get involved in on the forum the last week or the week before about a ticket price for something. And it was like, do you think that... It was Highlong. Do you think that Highlong is worth £85? And I'm like, it's amazing the way that we, as a metal community, treat tickets. Like, we put so much value. Like, all my best friends, my lifelong friends, they could probably name you Slipknot. That's their entire depth for their metal knowledge. And when they go to gigs, Oasis gigs, or Shed 7, or Travis, or fucking Shania Twain, that's never discussed. It's never discussed. Well, they'll decide themselves. Ultimately, they're going to go here. But when people say, "Is this band or is this event worth it?" It's like, well, is this watch worth it? Is the car that you've got in your driveway worth it? Is the house worth it? I mean, it's only worth what you're willing to pay. Why is that? And why are we comparing X to M? I mean, like, ultimately, if you're not happy paying it, don't pay it. But why are you trying? If Highlong need that, and you're looking at the stage, there is fucking 50 of them. I mean, it's like, it's not like it's not a one-man noise project. So there's clearly, I mean, even in the most layman terms, that is not a cheap band to get anywhere. Just accommodation and travel. So if you need to pay that for that show, what's this whole... I hear people that say, I will not pay over £30 for a Glasgow Barrowland show. And they're paying 140 to see Metallica elsewhere. But surely if your favourite band in the world is Frail Body, and Frail Body are playing a 150 cap room and the ticket's £25, you're like, that's double what I should pay. Like, surely how's that a conversation? Because how is Metallica 125, Red Hot Chili Peppers or Pantera or whoever it is, 125, a band that you could not stand watching, acceptable, but the band that you feel has created the best art in this genre that you love and have flown over from America to see, charging 25, and that's unacceptable. I'm like, where are you finding these values about what's appropriate to charge and what's appropriate not to charge? Because no one's got a gun in your head. It's like, this is just what we're asking you to pay, and if you're going to pay it, then fine if you don't. But I don't understand why we do that with metal gig tickets, but we don't do that for our clothing, where we live, what we drive, what we eat. I mean, it's like... What a weird crowd for like a premium hot sauce or a premium patch. I mean, a wee bit, literally a wee bit of fucking material would probably cost you 90 pence, and people are paying £15 for them, and that's fine. But I mean, the idea of this band's entire artistic career charging 25 for you to go and see them the one time they're going to play in Glasgow in 20 years is just outlandish. It's bizarre. I'd love to knock that out the whole metal community's head.
This is such a valid point. I'm actually glad this came up, because I remember one of the things that I was kind of struggling with, is still the case now, but obviously this is when it was fresh. When I first moved to the UK, one of the best things, like to me, I felt like a kid in a candy shop, was the fact that I could actually go to an HMV, right? Because over in Iran, other than bootlegs, you can't get actual albums, so you can't get albums with bootlegs or anything. Everything I ever had was bootleg. And I still have my bootleg collection from there, by the way. I brought it with me, okay? It's this little CD bag with like fucking bootleg Gorgoroth and Cannibal Corpse and all these different ones, that I've got from back then. And the thing for me was, holy shit, I get to go to an HMV and they've actually got a metal section. You go to see, they got Cannibal Corpse. Whoa, fuck. You can actually look at the CD and look at it. Like, I was going to the HMV at Oxford Street in London, literally taking pictures of Cannibal Corpse butchered at birth because I couldn't believe that it was a physical thing that I could look at, I only ever saw pictures of it, like digital versions or stuff like that, So it's like a totally different reality that most people are probably accustomed to. So to me, I'm like, fuck. I have the privilege of buying physical fucking copies, and actually, like, you support the band, and that the money that you're spending, might not support the band directly, but it's going to support the label, and then it's going to encourage them to, like, offer the band more. You know how it works. But anyway, albums are not even like a discussion now as far as finances are concerned. But anyway, I remember talking to some of the other guys who were my age, obviously, at that time, metalheads, some of the early friends that I made when I moved to the country, because I knew fucking no one when I first came here, and I came on my own. And I was talking to these guys, and I'm like, hey, you seen that new Cattle Decapitation album that came out? Or, that new Watain album that came out? They had just released Lawless Darkness. And they were like, oh, no, I'll just download it. And I was like, yeah, but you just spent fucking 40 quid buying Minecraft. So which is it? Like, where do your passions lie? So you want to talk, people will spend, like, nowadays with like PS4, PS5 games, people will literally spend 80 quid on a fucking video game, which, by the way...
And listen, I have zero issue. See, if you want to go and you want to spend it, and they don't even get the game. They just get the download. Yeah. They don't even get a physical product. See, that has never been my argument. My argument's always like, if you want to fucking spend £100 a day in snail shells, mate, knock yourself out. What not to do is then compare or complain about nothing. Spend whatever you want, however you want. I have no dramas with that whatsoever. Don't then just select the weakest link, which is more often than not the metal gig. So you're away, you're getting your £80 bag of gear, cocaine, you've got your your designer jeans on, you're drinking your bottle of Grey Goose.
80 quid for good quality over here, man. Yeah.
Your weekend just cost you £200 there, pal. And they said, but there's no way I'm getting napalm death £27. I mean, it's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, well, listen, this is the thing that I'm saying, to me, it wasn't so much that, I'm willing to pay 40 quid on a fucking video game, and then, it's there's nothing wrong with that part of it. Video games are still state of the art, as far as I'm concerned, in terms of technology and an entertainment experience, especially nowadays. But that doesn't mean that, why does the thing in your life that arguably maybe even gets you through the worst shit in your life, this music that gives you meaning, that actually helps you go through life, you give it the least amount of monetary value? Like, what's that all about? I don't get it.
I'm obsessive. I'm obsessive with merch. It's my thing. It's so I'm going for the age. I get into metal at 19, 20, very late to it, and hearing what everybody was doing. things. So you're getting your favourite Slayer, Napalm Death t-shirt, Cult of Luna, Amon Ra, and it's just all big potato sack, 2 hanging sleeves at the side, and you just accept it. You just accept that's the way it's supposed to be, because that's what. And then Damnation would just start using better products, better blanks, Earth Positive, Stanley Stella, fucking Sols, all these ones. Instead, you're like, oh my god, merch can fit. Merch can actually, you can pull it on, it can feel like it's supposed to be a t-shirt you're supposed to get. And then what do you get? So instead of getting your blank for a £5, you're paying £8 for your blank. Instead of ripping off someone else's artwork, you're going paying an artist. You're commissioning an artist to make the artwork. And then you're getting it designed front and back, multiple colours. And that piece of merch you've got, instead of costing you £6, is now costing you, I don't know, fucking 13 or 14. And then you're going to the gig, or Damnation in my example, and everybody still wants the £10 grindcore t-shirt. And it's like, I can't even get it delivered to me for that price. I mean, what are you talking about? And then let's not get too technical about it. When you're at Damnation, there's VAT. So if I sell you a £30 t-shirt, £6 already with the government before anything happens. Forget the seller's fees, the blank, the art. It's like when we're charging that. No, but I went to a One Rot show the other day, and they were still punting about. Aye, but I was the drummer for some suitcase on a gilding print with one white print in the front. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I mean, good for One Rot and continue lads. But why are you getting so hung up about something you're so passionate about? It's like you've came here. You're going to wear this t-shirt for like 5-10 years. I mean, the difference of like £10 or £15 means that much to you. It's like it's worth an argument on the internet about. Yet you've got the rest of the world just aimlessly buying Kanye West t-shirts that are on a white blank for 300. Well, forget the swastika, a white blank for like fucking $590, and you just get people just wandering about like the same t-shirt. You're like, it's fucking. It just infuriates me that sometimes you can't see the quality and what it's worth for what it's worth. It's like that Napalm Death show was definitely worth the £30 in comparison to everything else. If you're skint, relatively, it doesn't make a difference what anything is, because you're just fucking skint. It doesn't matter if it's a £5 or a £500. You just don't have the money to do it. But if you're not skint and you're still going through life with that, continually comparing apples to oranges and then going on the internet and complaining about it, you're like, this is what's fucking holding on all this scene back. It's just continually nitpicking about why you don't think it was worth paying £20 to go and see some quality international band because they've only got 2,000 streams in Spotify, but you would deem them worthy of £20 if they had 50,000 streams in Spotify. It's just fucking ridiculous.
100%. One thing that, I kind of like to put this in people's heads, because this is the way I view and approach just the idea of merchandise, at the very least in the context of the music that we're all involved with here. And it's the following, is that just as a consumer alone, okay, if you want to purchase a band's merch, okay, I'll make the example of Trivex, okay, so let's say if I'm talking to people who want to support the band, okay, if you're someone who wants to buy the band's shirt or buy the vinyl, buy the long sleeve, the patch, whatever it is, first of all, I'm extremely grateful for that, okay, because that's to me, it's a meaningful transaction, okay. Because it's not just about the fact that, we might make a profit for it. We're not doing what the fuck we're doing for profit. It would be the dumbest thing in the world to do this music for profit. Okay. That's just like out of the question, right? So the way that I want someone to approach that is they want to buy a piece of merchandise, they want to wear a certain design, they want to have a certain logo, because that's a statement of who they are. So when they wear that in public, whether people know it or not, it's a statement of who they want to show the world that they are, okay? So you're not doing it to do the band a favor, all right? The band are going to carry on doing their thing regardless. And of course, we do appreciate the fuck out of you being there, but do it for you. If you want to pay for it because that's the armor that you're going to put on your chest. And when you walk out into the streets, people are going to look at that and think, ooh, what's that all about? If there's a specific text on it, or like if it's a nails one, says, you will never be one of us. Ooh, what does that mean? That's a statement of your personality. Or Cradle of Filth, Jesus is a cunt. Okay? You buy that because that's an extension of your personality that you're trying to make a statement to the rest of the world. Or for us, true Iranian black metal. How many other places are you going to see this? Nowhere. You're only going to get it with us. So it's just an idea. If you want to, for example, go and buy, let's say, a Damnation merch that's got a certain lineup, that's for your own personal statement to say, I like this music. That's where I was. I was there with a bunch of very fucking cool, like-minded people, and that's why I'm going to wear it. And that's it. Everything else is secondary to that.
Yeah, and to have that feeling, because you see often, this is, you're never changing this, or if we are, it's going to take a long time. My limit for a long sleeve is £30. So that's the line. So that it's not like, if that long sleeve is in the nicest quality garment, it's embroidered, it's got 17 different colours in it, it's got a back print, it's got a front print, it makes me feel like a king when I put it on. Doesn't matter. If it's £35, I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it, right? My limit's £30. Yeah, I didn't buy the Ford Fiesta. I went for the Tiguan and spent another £8,000 in something that means nothing to me and I have no personal relationship with or feel anything about. And you're like, well, why was that? Why did you not have the £8,000 limit on your car? I mean, like, why don't you go into a car showroom and just say, no matter what happens for the next 20 years, depreciation, appreciation, nothing in between, I go £8,000 in the car, and I won't pay above it. I see a steak. If I can't get a steak for £25, I am not paying above £25. No one does that. No one gets a bit of life saying that's the only price I'm going to pay for a steak. They go, well, how good's a steak? How big's a steak? How's it going to be cooked? I'm in a fancy restaurant. I'm in a shitty restaurant. Then I'll decide what I want to pay for the steak. Well, these people just come on and just... That's a good point. This arbitrary, like, boom, £25, £30 for a long sleeve, and I won't pay it. Like, so if I just get a flimsy, faulty piece after one wash, single print, white in the front, and I give you that, but it's under £30, then we're all good if it says Damnation on it, because we can do that, and I'll have the biggest profit margins I've ever had. But it's this, I don't even know how did we end up going down this path.
Yeah, and we haven't even started OnlyFans shaming people yet. Yeah, that's a different story. Yeah, no, I agree, man. I'm actually really glad we're having this conversation because it's worth bringing it up, you know, and you know, you have to understand that everyone who participates in this culture moving forward, you know, every now and then I will come out and say something like, I am grateful for the promoters, I am grateful for the agents and the bands and everyone, or the vloggers even, you know, like the YouTubers. Well, maybe not the agents. I hope I'm gonna send this to our own agent. I'm gonna make him watch it. Yeah, he's a good guy. But what I always say is that, you know, listen, I'm grateful that we're actually making this culture happen, because you need all these different elements of it to, you know, for this to actually survive and be a thing, you know, because I think I kind of got a scare. Maybe I got a scare a bit more than some other people during the first sort of series of lockdowns, because I saw a lot of things that were just completely fucking wrong and batshit crazy to me, but I saw how the music industry was getting treated secondhand. And we're now talking about I had Simon Hall on here just a few weeks ago with Bloodstock, and you know, he was obviously talking about how I think 20 or 25% of the grassroots venues in the UK just in the recent years have all shut down, you know, and they're all closing down. The government don't give a fuck about preserving metal culture. They could not care less. And by the way, it doesn't matter which government's in charge. None of them give a fuck about our culture, you know. To me, heavy metal is our culture, you know. I feel very passionate about it. I've basically risked my own fucking life for it, you know, so it's something that I have a very serious approach to. And we are the ones who are going to have to fucking preserve this thing. And we are going to have to do it ourselves, and we're going to have to do it on our own terms, because these venues are constantly shutting down. Governments are fucking constantly breaking them down, demolishing them just so that they can build flats. Okay.
Yep.
And that has absolutely zero positive impact on what we're doing. In fact, it has a very negative impact, because the younger bands, let's say a band like us, if, yes, we weren't able to leave the UK for like 10 years whilst our immigration shit got sorted, but at least in the meantime, we were able to play all over the UK, and and we are one of the bands, we must have played like every fucking shithole across this country, everything. Like, we've literally played fucking Bridgewater, Cheltenham, fucking Dudley, like all of these like random places, or like Neath in Wales, if anyone even knows where that is. We've played all those places, but if it wasn't for the grassroots venues being there and being available, we would have never even had the opportunity to truly hone our craft, okay? Yeah. And I think as artists and as people, you need that rather than stifle it, because then it just becomes this slow dying thing, where it's a risk for everyone. It becomes a case of what just happened in Brazil that we were talking about earlier. We don't want that, okay? We want this to be thriving, but in order for that to happen, we all need to do our own part to make sure that the wheels keep on running, okay? Now, the promoters got their own job. They take massive fucking financial risks and personal risks and mental health and all of that stuff. The same applies to the musicians. They also take those same risks. So all we need is just for the audience to know that, listen, if you really care about this music, then invest in it. Give it your time. Give it the attention. Even if you're tired, but there's a gig down the road, just go and see it anyway. You never know who you're going to bump into. You never know what's going to happen. And yes, it's a gamble on the part of the audience as well. I get that. But I just want to encourage us to, listen, we all have a responsibility. If you really like the music, if you really like fucking big riffs and fucking, big drum beats, you need to save the culture with your own hands, basically.
Absolutely, well said. And across the board, I think the first rule on that, the almost mock forum commandments is no one likes to hear about bands you don't like as much as you like to fucking tell them. It's like... It's boring. It's boring hearing negativity all the time, and it doesn't need to be at the forefront all the time. It doesn't need to be your go-to place to be negative. You can be positive about a scene, about this culture. God, you're in it. You're already here. You're already here. So, I'm not to say, I'm the first person to have a dig at power metal or Volbeat or whatever, or Manowar. But that's the definition of punching up. You know what I mean? It's okay to slag off Manowar. Manowar are just fine. I don't exist to Manowar, right? But it's the folk that are going on there and saying, oh, do you know that band I don't like? Trivax. Trivax are shit. What are you gaining for that?
I've heard that.
What do you think you're achieving? You're taking somebody else's hard work and efforts. And of course, it's not going to be for everyone. But
sure.
To then put that out into the world, to the social media, it's such a it's something that we're going to take a long time to try and unravel. I don't know if it's a defence mechanism where people have grew up through school when they feel they had to defend metal and they just take it one step further. Doesn't matter how far down the rabbit hole they get, when they're in that space with everyone round about them, they still need to be fucking the negative Nancy. I struggle with that because I didn't come from that background. I didn't come through school with metal. I wasn't like yourself, and I don't have that fucking deep and meaningful relationship with these bands that you had from a very young age. I've developed it from adulthood, and I hate it. I hate seeing how these metal fans can be. They look at a lineup that's got 46 bands in it, and they tell you the band they don't like. How did you manage that?
This is very true.
how did you manage to tell us the band you don't like out of the 45 you do? It's like, you need to big this up, or else we've got no chance. We've got absolutely no chance. There's a lot of talent out there. There's a lot of really good stuff. And what you say about getting out and checking out bands, sometimes the best nights you have are the ones you didn't plan. And that's true for gigs as well. You can be looking at that gig in your calendar for 6 months, and you get there and have a great night, or you can go out tomorrow and go to a gig and have the best time ever. You know what I mean? So it's I totally agree.
Absolutely, man. 100%. And the thing that this is perhaps ad nauseum for some of my listeners, But one thing that I always say on this show, and I've said it on stage before and many other places, is that you gotta understand that we're in an extreme fucking minority here. Okay, so you might go and look at Spotify number of streams and it might say, oh, millions and millions or whatever, you know, and then you have to understand that a lot of those are repeats, by the way. Most of those are repeats, you know, and shuffles and things like that. There, you might go to an event, you might go to the arena in Manchester and you might look around and you might see like 1,000 people around you all wearing metal shirts and headbanging and moshing and all of this stuff, all the vendors, and it might feel like, oh, this is this big, massive thing. It's not big at all.
We're a niche within a niche within a niche. By the time you get, you're a niche beyond my niche. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not, they're not massive, and people can get lost in that. You're totally right. You show up with something, but that's taking everything. You get 5,000 people in that industrial estate in Manchester for Damnation. That's pretty much the full UK's support for Pig Destroyer. You know what I mean? Everybody who likes Pig Destroyer happens to be in that room with you at that time. It's not like they're not showing up the following night and 5,000 different people. That's not happening. So no, I totally agree with that as well. It's
yeah,
and positive. I've been positive, haven't we? And I think so. I've been thinking as well when we were chatting there, because the thing with black metal is it penetrates well through different nations. You know, so like you get Finland and Norway, and you probably get your Americans and people in Australia who would tune in to a podcast like this. How do you think they're getting on with my Scottish accent?
Oh,
because you're doing well. You're doing very, very well,
Thank
mate.
you.
I think you've trained yourself to listen.
Yes. I had a little bit of training with your own podcast. I think it's good. I understand quite well. Yeah. But you know what? I know this might sound really fucking cheesy, but to me, I recognize passion a lot before I recognize words, and that's the thing I respond to best, you know, because that's what I have, and which obviously you have, you know, and I think that, by the way, since you mentioned black metal as well, obviously I do have, black metal listeners coming in, but I kind of have people from all over, you know, like I've had all kinds of people on here,
I'm sure.
You know. I had John from Incantation on here, and I actually met him at Damnation in 22.
Nicest guy ever.
Nicest guy, absolutely brilliant fucking guy. You know, he's a real diehard who really cares about this culture as well. You know, so it's worth mentioning his name. But the thing for me is, you look behind me and you see true Iranian black metal. That's there because other than myself, there's a gentleman called Sina who lives in Norway with a band called From the Vastland. Great band. Unfortunately, they don't really play outside of Norway, but otherwise I would bring him here myself. But there's him, and there's another guy called Saman who still lives in Iran, and he had the band Eko Vefrit back in like early mid 2000s. And then there's also, I guess, the guy who's the vocalist for Lavizan Jungle, and he's my best mate of 15, 20 years now. Other than us, there's not really anyone else who's even notably close to actually representing the Iranian extreme metal scene. Okay.
Yeah.
And there's like, if you even want to come out of extreme metal, you have Arsames who were massive during the MySpace era. Now they're not really relevant so much anymore. I played guitars for them like 12 years ago, but that was it. You've got the band Confess. Don't know if you heard of them, but Nikon, you know, he went to prison in Iran and now they're active in Norway, but they're actually like they're actually touring and playing shows abroad in Europe. At the moment, other than Confess and Trivax, there's actually no other Iranian bands who actually come from Iran, who actually spent time in that scene and actually played underground shows there. And actually, Confess, don't think they even played any shows there. but they actually played underground shows there, and then are now playing abroad, are signed to labels, are actually doing tours and stuff. So there's literally like 2 or 3 of us, you know, and I happen to be one of them. And when I have that back there, that's not because I'm some black metal fucking elitist. Black metal comprises maybe 3% of the music that I listen to, okay? But it's a part of a movement that I'm a part of. And also, I'm also very critical of Islam, and that seems to kind of go hand in hand with black metal because you know, I know everyone here likes to play it safe. You know, you can criticize Christianity as much as you want, but when it comes to Islam, it's like, oh no, you can't do that. Oh, fuck off. You know, like I'll criticize whoever I want. You know,
you go for it, mate. You go for it.
Yeah, exactly. I will.
Well, but I take it back. I apologize. I apologize for the assumption that black metal fans listen to this podcast, and I look forward to seeing listeners of all genres at Damnation then.
For sure, yes, absolutely, yeah. It was just it's just a general clarification as well, you know. And listen, I think even if it was black metal, I think that would be fine because I'm aware that your favorite band of all time is Mayhem, you know, and I think that you would, of course, you know, people would appreciate that. So
don't forget Batushka. I love my time with Batushka too.
You know, that's a band I never got into. I literally never got into them, you know, and I know they made like when you had them playing that second stage at the uni when we were still in Leeds, I know everyone was going there, and I was like, I just don't get this, you know, like it's just not for me. And then when they split off, and then people were like, oh, that other version's better than this other one. Oh no, this version's better. I'm like, literally to my ears, it all sounds like shit. I'm sorry. It's just my take on it. It is literally a band that never did anything for me. If you want to take all your fucking house furniture on stage and call that a fucking theater or whatever and wear your fucking nanny's robe, fine. It's just not for me. That's all. That's all it is.
Alright, well, listen, I'm behind you. Doesn't even matter. Doesn't even matter if I liked the music. By the time that I was done with dealing with Batushka, I was no longer a fan. So I'm like,
oh, really?
I've just, you know what? You get these bands, don't you? You get these bands that are just.
Yeah. Well, tell me about it. What was your experience? What was it that kind of like put you off in the interactions?
To be fair, my crew or that crew would be better placed to tell. They made everything difficult. It was one of those ones where it was a catch-22 of being there to tell them what needed to happen next, and them not being there, and then showing up and going, "Why didn't you tell us?" And I feel like, there's a few members of our crew that would no longer work with Damnation if we booked Batushka again, or whatever version of that Batushka it was, because obviously it became 2 different people, and I'm not quite sure who is who. But
I'm not.
You can put up with difficult bands, but bands being disrespectful and bands putting your team through shit, and it's like I've got no skin in the game in the sense of with bands like that, and like the joke with Mayhem, and I've got no skin in the game, and they're not my favourite. So if you're going to make life difficult for us, Damnation's just not going to book them because I'm the one that does the bookings. So maybe they don't care. They're about like, just go and continue our careers anyway. But it's you don't. There's enough problems at a festival the size of Damnation, and 20 or 30 bands all showing up from across the world and trying to make it all work in one day without people just being negative and difficult because they're choosing to be. So that was my Batushka take.
Absolutely. Okay. I'm not, and in a way, I'm not surprised to hear that, because I think, and this is a generalized, perhaps somewhat presumptuous take, but, by the way, sorry, just a quick bracket here. This is the most I've shit on other bands on any of the episodes that I've done, and I think it's your fault.
I'm sorry if that's my influence.
This is literally I've spent the last day or two listening to your podcast, so I've just entered here okay, I'm just gonna give my mind's like 1 minute we're like, oh, it's not good saying anything bad about these bands, and now it's just like I've opened the floodgates, But
there's definitely a point of there's two things over there. Firstly, I want you as a listener to know when I am praising a band and throwing all my passion behind the band, that it's 100% legit. And it can only be 100% legit if there's another side to that spectrum. You can't be Mr. Positive. You can't just run about with fucking unicorns and pink flowers, so there has to be a bit. Secondly, shitting in bands that have earned that slagging off, shitting in them, fucking anyway. That's very different for us to just sitting here and going, we don't like Papa Roach. Who listens to Papa Roach? Last Resort was a fucking terrible. Who listens to new metal? They're two very separate things. I've had experiences with hundreds of bands, and I've been honest about some bands that have been unpleasant to work with, and that's the truth. That was my experience of that band. It is not me just coming on and getting behind the mic because I can and just shitting. And when I do shit in bands, like as I say, Manowar, it is very much one. I don't like Manowar, and I don't think that I don't think they're probably good people to work with anyway. But secondly, Manowar don't care. Manowar are not their own fucking stratosphere. They don't give a shit about Gavin McInally for Damnation Festival. So it's not like me coming on here and try to hold in some power metal band or try to get a first gig or EP out. So I get what you mean. It can sound as if you're on one hand you're saying, let's all just be nice and positive, and then the other hand you're going, by the way, Batushka were a bit shite, weren't they? But ultimately some people just fucking deserve it, and that's the truth.
Absolutely. So Manowar's confirmed for Damnation headliners then, yeah?
My fucking man. I had the misfortune, I seen Manowar once. It was fucking terrible.
There's that interview with, I don't want to forget what I was just saying about Batushka a minute ago, but there's a hilarious interview with James Hetfield on French TV from 2004 or something like that. And the guy says to him, this is the reporter that says to James, it goes, I actually went on stage with Manowar. And then James's instant response, so witty, he just goes, sorry to hear that. It's just like perfect. It takes him half a second to say that. It's perfect. It's great. Love it. But, I'm not anti-Manowar by any means, So just going back into it, so we were talking about Batushka. I think this is something that's happened with a lot of bands, and I wonder if you've kind of dealt with this more yourself from the promoter's perspective. Something that seems to happen quite often is, because generally in metal, you gotta fucking work for it. You gotta work for it for years before you even get to a place, I know people who are in bands who've been around for 20, 30 years and they still have to work a full-time job next to it, just to make it work, and these are legendary big bands, that aren't even cheap to hire, perhaps At the Gates could be an example of that, actually.
Yeah, I'm not going to talk about band fees, but you put, let's say we regularly pay for bands that are mid to like late afternoon, 10, 15 grand, and to fly in. Right, okay, so you are 9 people by the time you've got your band, your sound engineer, your light engineer, your tour manager. Now, you need to get there. You get 15 grand, so you get across. You'll be a tax to pay. You get across, we likely aren't doing your hotels and ground transport. So you get that to sort. There's probably going to have some production you want to do with it. So by the time you're getting it, let's say you slice all the fat, your agents get 10%. Slice all the fat, let's say you luckily manage to get to 9 grand. That is a grand per member for what is seen as quite a plum festival show, and you might get 2 or 3 of them a year. And then the rest of your actual fees you get are closer to 4 or 5. So that's not 11. That's not like somebody
Absolutely.
goes, 15 grand. Book a Ferrari. It's like, no, your cut of 15 grand is ultimately 1,000 that you'll probably get personal tax on anyway. So 800 is what you've got for flying in for that show where you've been at the top end of a bill in an arena. And you think all the bands beneath that are getting nothing like 15 grand, and they're still showing up. 4 or 5 band members, if they're really professional, probably won't have their own lighting engineer, probably won't have their own sound guy, probably going to have a tour manager. It just becomes, they've got a van outside. The money is just, I'm going into it with this podcast next week. I don't know when this podcast comes out that you're doing, but we're going at the 20th of March, we were first going out, and I'm seeing it, we're getting paid okay fees to go up to $1,000 a night for me and James to go out, and it's still, I mean, we've got a tour manager, we're going to need ground transport, need to book hotels. Before you know it, the money just dwindling away, and I'm very appreciative at 43 years old, a man with no talent gets to go out and actually do a tour. You know what I mean? I'm going to get to experience being an artist for at least 7 nights in my life, and I appreciate the fees because I know what it takes to get, I feel like, £1,000, and it's madness how quickly that £1,000 disappears between two people. Never mind the goddamn band.
Yeah. Well, first of all, you have the talent of being authentic, so I will give you that. But that's amazing, man. Yes. So you said the tour is starting on is it the 20th of March it's starting?
I'll just look at my calendar. 20th of March in Bristol. So we're in Bristol on the 20th of March. Is this podcast out before then?
So this podcast is going to come out on the 19th of March, in fact.
There you go. Tomorrow.
There we go.
I would actually buy tickets for Bristol, but it's sold out.
Oh, yeah?
Not you personally.
Right, yeah, sure.
So
got you, man.
I'm looking forward to it a wee bit. You know what? I'm not even trying that whole apprehensive or nervous. I'm apprehensive, I'm nervous, but as I say, I've been given an opportunity at 43 years old to go out there and do something you've done, as you said, 100 times plus just before you even thought you could do that. Go on stage and ultimately perform. I don't have a guitar in my hand. I'm not a drum kit. I don't want to sing, but I need to go up there in 90 minutes of entertainment ultimately for people who have paid, I don't know, $17.50 a ticket. So I do not I'm not taking it lightly, but I don't want to get into the situation where I am in my life that fear just, I freeze up, mate, as well, and it becomes because there's nothing worse that you go to these amateur comedy shows and the first thing they say when they go up and goes, oh, this is the first time I've done this, I don't know if I'm funny. I mean, it's like, that's the worst start to any comedy set, is someone telling you before they start that they're not funny or sure they're funny. Not that we do comedy, but you want to go out with some sort of even fake reassurance in yourself that people are paid to come and see you after listening to fucking 62 hours of you chatting. There must be something in there that people enjoy. Like, if you can't trust yourself at that point, then you might as well just give up. Yeah.
I think you said the key word there, which is trusting yourself. You know, I think that you will. I know that you will do great. You know, I think that the key is to, because I've obviously, as a musician, I've been on stage into the 3 digits at least. You know, and that's not a flex. You know, that's just an observation. Yeah, but I think that I've also been on stage doing the podcast or conference thing, and it is a different beast, but the key to it is to just trust yourself and just know that what you have, who you are, how you project your voice in a room, how you deal with people, that's gonna get you through it, you know, and try not to overthink it too much from the audience's perspective, and just be yourself and just let them observe how they want to observe. And I think that always seems to do the trick in those situations.
Yeah, I mean, exactly that. I suppose we start every episode that we've done now, because that podcast gets started with like 7 episodes, ideas for 7 episodes. And then like James was starting to get a bit flustered, the idea of what happens in week 8. Like, it either comes to us by that point or it doesn't. I mean, then you're not changing anyone's life. We're just stopping anyway. You're not changing anyone's life. We're continuing. But it's like, it'll come to you. It won't. It'll feel natural. It won't. It's not something you get in. Here we are, as I say, a year later talking about Portaloos. So it's like,
yes,
God knows what it'll take you. At some point, you have to trust the process. The process took us to Portaloos. It's out today, and people are like, that's the best episode that I've heard yet. And you're like, how the fuck did we end up here? And it was the process, wasn't it? So ultimately, for me to go up there and try and be anything I'm not, I'm sure would be the biggest mistake of it all. Going up there and trying to be Ed Gamble, going up there and trying to be something that I've seen in a Netflix special would be the worst mistake I could make, because I'm not those people. And the same way, I suppose that applies to my promoting style. Don't try to be Andy Coppin. Do not try to be Vicky Hungerford. Don't try to be James Scarlett. Just be yourself. And ultimately, you can't really fail with that. Fuck, I sound like an IKEA poster. But it's like, ultimately, the thing I'm very confident at being, and I know what to do is be myself, isn't it? It's like, I know how to be Gavin McInally. I don't know how to be fucking Vicky Hungerford. I don't know how to be James Scarlett. So as long as that's not damaging the festival, then long may it continue, or the podcast.
Absolutely, man. Well, I definitely think that it served you more than anything. Congratulations, by the way, on the first year anniversary of obviously doing it with James. I know that we've just gone past that, and yeah, it's great. I think what you guys are doing is valuable. I think it's valuable for the fans. It's valuable for also artists and musicians, and everyone else who's kind of involved in this thing. And ultimately, at the end of it, I think it's great. I mean, I'm very impressed to see the success of the tour, first of all. I think that's awesome. That kind of gives me hope that, there's maybe more room for like these kind of on-stage discussions and things like that, which... Yeah.
Listen, I've been a promoter for 20 years, and Damnation aside, those I know what it takes to sell a ticket. I mean, I know how difficult it is to sell a ticket. I've put on these bands. I mean, I put on Watain in Glasgow and done 168 tickets, and like, that's not when Watain was small. It's like, I know how difficult it is to get people to leave their house and come to a gig, and so do you. You've seen it yourself. So I don't. Like when we had the conversation, we're in a very privileged position in the sense of how deep we are in the industry. The cogs that we had round about us were very easy to acquire. Like we've got an amazing, our booking agent books Cult of Luna and Boris and Envy, and that was Amin Raz and Alcest and Soul Stuffers booking agent. That's quality, being able to get that. And promoters were lining up to put the show on, because even if it wasn't a financial success for them, it's very handy to have a guy like James Scarlett own you one. You know what I mean? He's got two festivals, it could be 20,000 capacity each. Forget Damnation, but even his festivals, it's very handy to have a guy like James Scarlett in your Rolodex. So it wasn't difficult to get a tour put together for us. But ultimately, that isn't selling you a single goddamn ticket. No one gives a shit who our agent is. No one gives a shit who is putting us on. It's, were we interested enough to leave the house for on a Thursday night? And I was like, let's aim for cafes, 50 to 60 capacity. If we sell 30 tickets, then Bob's your auntie. It's like, we're laughing, because at least it's not going to feel like you're going out there to two men and a dog. And they were very much like, no, we're aiming bigger, 170 to 200. One of them, the one in London or Gloucester's like 280 capacity. And the ones that have sold out are between that sort of 120 to 180 capacity. And it's like, my God, that's a lot.
That's good, man.
You consider the bands we put on Damnation. I mean, look at the smaller stages, every lineup with Damnation, even at arena level, a lot of those bands aren't doing those ticket sales. So I understand. I'm not saying that again, as you say, to flex. I'm doing it like I've got an appreciation for what it is, for how many people are turning out for this. So, aye. And now that we're talking about it, I'm shitting myself again. What I just said I wasn't going to do.
Yeah, man. No, I'm just looking at the tour now. So you got Bristol at the Hen and Chicken. You got Birmingham, the Glee Club, Gloucester, Guildhall, London, Bush Hall, Glasgow, Slay. Oh, that's a nice trip. Oh, you've got a bit of a break between London and Glasgow, and then you've got
we
Manchester.
Went for weekends because
makes sense.
Manchester and then Leeds is the final show. We went for weekends because again we're like, do you really want to leave your house on a Monday or Tuesday night? I mean, really, to go and is the whole dynamic of it. It's like you've got that whole weekend feel, or at least the start of the weekend. You're going to go and sit back, hopefully have a laugh and some engaging stories about, I don't know, fucking Temples Festival or Magla. So it's
that gives you plenty.
It gives you plenty. There's plenty to start with right there. So
that's it.
I massively appreciate. It's not, as I say, I am going with this whole thing. It's more of a, because this is not like I'm not coming back. This isn't changing my life financially. Even though we've got decent, like, you come back up the road, and if I don't lose money for it, like, great. Put £1,000 in my bank after it, also great.
Yeah.
But I'm doing it because I'm like I want to go out and experience this and feel like a touring artist after 20 years of booking touring artists.
Yeah, well, 100%, man. I think you have, I think a more worthy word than deserve is that you have earned it. And, and we're all here for it, man. I'm going to see if I could potentially make it to your Bristol show, because Bristol's only about an hour or so away from where I am. So, yeah, I'll see if I can make that one. Will be cool. Did you say it's already sold out?
It's already sold out. If you can get to Bristol, I will use my one-person guest list for you. Okay, you can be my one guest in the far-flung city of Bristol. So you let me know if you can make that our journey.
Thank you, man. That's very kind of you. I appreciate it. I would love to be able to make it and kind of just see how the whole thing goes, man. Amazing. Listen, Gav, fucking hell, man. We can go on as I've come to discover. So I think we're gonna have to do some other episodes in the future. Definitely. You're a natural at this. So do you want to give any kind of? I think everyone's kind of clued up by now. But as we kind of wrap this up. Is there any kind of plug or anything you want to give people? If there's anyone kind of like outstanding left to get tickets or anything like that?
No. What I want to tell you is in episode 2, we'll talk about my 160k bench, okay? That's what we'll do.
Right.
Episode 2.
Holy shit, 160k.
All right, for one, obviously. Okay. Listen, that's where we're going. That, and by that point, maybe we'll talk about the McGlass story once I'm back off tour and told the McGlass story and how I became an overnight Nazi. After I told that story 7 times, in tour, I believe I'll have that one nailed for you. So, episode 2, Gav's Outstanding Bench in McGlath. There's the title for you. Boom.
That's amazing, man. There we go. Gav, my man, thank you so much for this. I really appreciate your time. I appreciate it's late and you've had a hectic day, so I really appreciate you being on here. Best of luck with the tour. And looking forward to hopefully seeing you there. And best of luck with Damnation as well. You guys have made a beast. And to everyone else listening to the podcast so far, support the fuck out of 2 promoters, 1 pod, Damnation Festival, and we'll see you on the next episode of Iblis Manifestations. Bye-bye.
Legend.